This is One-on-One. Hi, Steve Adubato. We're coming to you from the New Jersey Senate chamber here at the Statehouse. This is part of a series we're doing with legislative leaders, talking to the people who matter, particularly when the governor is out doing some national things, but also trying to take care of business. Here in the state, we're joined by State Senator Joseph Kyrillos, who represents the 13th legislative
You're right,
district.
Stephen.
We're here on the 24th of February. The governor is giving his budget address this afternoon. Yesterday, a major announcement by Judge Mary Jacobson about the pension payment that has to be paid by the state. Anxious?
You know what? This is an anxious time for the state government and for state capitals, I think, all around America. It's a challenging time economically for a lot of people. I've often felt that the state government doesn't match the greatness of the people of New Jersey. We have some good people here, but we've all got to collectively rise to the occasion. The Democratic leadership here in the legislature, the Republican governor and his team. And I think if we can get together and solve some of these big practical problems, not necessarily ideological problems for the state, it's going to help everybody that wants to be helped politically out as well. I
always say this, we're taping on the 24th. I hope the Transportation Trust Fund issue is resolved. The Transportation Trust Fund is the pot of money that pays for the roads and bridges. 1/3 of them, as we do this program, is reported today, crumbling, antiquated, in trouble. It's running out of money on the last day of June. I hope by the time this program airs that there's a solution, but as we speak right now, there isn't one. Why does it take a crisis? Why does it take a pension crisis? Why does it always seem to take a crisis before there's even a so-called solution? Is that my interpretation of it?
Listen, it's human nature, right? We were all students at one point. We all know about waiting to the last day for the term paper, the last moments to study for the exam. Typically in the private sector, there's enough pressure to avert the crises. There's so much scrutiny from stockholders and stakeholders, and it shouldn't happen here. But we've got a pension crisis looming. We heard some about it just yesterday, a big court decision. The state government, the other branches, the political branches will grapple with that outcome. You mentioned the Transportation Trust Fund, and we have an ongoing jobs crisis. In this state. I don't know if crisis is the right word, probably not the right word, but we need to grow more and faster and better and create the kinds of jobs that will satisfy all our people. And 20, 30 years ago, New Jersey could act as if it were an island. We were in a great geographic location between New York and Philadelphia and the Atlantic Ocean, but now it's a big flat world. And people are competing all around the region, the country, the world at large. And so people don't have to be in New Jersey. So we have to make it as attractive as possible for them to want to be here, for all the other reasons that it's attractive to be here. We love living in New Jersey. And so it's a competition. And right now we're not winning it, but we can win it.
But Senator, is that why you've introduced this 6-phase jobs bill, fostering innovation, lowering excessive costs, reducing restrictive regulations, developing New Jersey's workforce, enhancing tourism and agriculture? It goes on and on. And by the way, is that the role of a state legislator?
Well, it is. In a perfect world, it wouldn't be. We would leave the private sector to its devices to grow and to flourish, and we would deal with roads and bridges and schools and the safety net and the like. But we need to have a public-private partnership. We need to compete with other localities around the region, the country,
what would this do
and the world. Well, those are an array of good jobs and economic development bills to help foster a climate where companies can relocate, flourish here, and they're smaller in comparison to some of the big omnibus economic incentive bills that we've passed to attract big companies away from Manhattan, for example, and to the Hudson waterfront and to other places. Manhattan's a very high-cost place. We're a little bit less, and we're very close. There's going to be people that want to come here. Some people won't only want to be in New York because it's New York.
Why do we
But we're doing
Senator,
we're doing a good job. But we have to do more.
Sorry for interrupting. Why do we lose so many businesses? Why do we lose so many businesses. The governor talks about, I believe it's Mercedes-Benz. He makes reference
It's
to that.
a big high-profile
we lost
one.
Mercedes-Benz. There are a lot of jobs.
But
we
there
lose
are others.
a lot.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Yeah. Well, you would think that the folks in Germany would think that the cost savings to go to Atlanta wouldn't be enough.
New Jersey to Atlanta, Mercedes-Benz did that.
To dislocate all those people and that big operation. But the truth is, these operations can be performed in many, many places. It does not have to be in New Jersey.
So what's our competitive advantage?
And so
then?
in other places, rent's cheaper, land is cheaper, insurance is cheaper, taxes are cheaper, the climate may be better. And so, you know, New Jersey is a great location next to the greatest city in the world, with great natural resources and great, bright, educated people. So all of us are here for a reason, right? We love raising our families here and being close to so many great things and great schools. So we got to take that great human capital and marry it to a better business climate so we can grow and flourish. The reason I focus, Steve, so much on jobs and economic development is because everything else flows from a strong economy and strong tax revenues to the state treasury.
Do you think the tax structure is screwed up? You think the regulatory structure is screwed up?
Well, I think that the business taxes here are too burdensome. I think the income tax, when the top rate for personal income taxes is near 9%. And in Pennsylvania, for example, just a stone throw across the river from where we're sitting, the effective top rate is 5%.
5 versus 9.
5 versus 9. So if you're the CEO of Johnson & Johnson, you parachute into New Brunswick to run your company, but you go back home to New Jersey. I don't want to pick on Johnson & Johnson, Pennsylvania.
You pay 5% versus 9.
Yeah. So listen, people can get that math. So
say someone says, wait a minute, we would get that revenue. Hold on, devil's advocate.
Sure.
A lot of Democrats would say, wait a minute. We would get that revenue, plus we should increase the millionaires tax because we can get the millionaires.
You know what? It makes everybody feel good, those of us that are not paying that high rate, but the math doesn't work. If it worked, maybe we could justify doing it, but what happens is we lose that revenue. We have an out-migration of high net worth people. Where I represent, Steve, in some of the affluent parts of Monmouth County, I could take you on a residential tour and point out the houses of affluent people who live there 6 months a year, less a day, so they don't pay New Jersey income tax. Their primary residence is New Hampshire, it's Florida, it's Texas, it's someplace else. Because the tax structure is less. So that's, you ask about the tax structure, that some of the
what about the regulatory
the burdensome business taxes and the regulatory stuff. Listen, you know, the DEP, the Department of Community Affairs, sometimes other agencies of government, they're too tough. We have consumer protections that we've got to uphold, environmental constraints, no doubt about it.
That's what Citizen Action. New Jersey Citizen Action will argue that. A lot of the consumer groups will say, you'll call them burdensome regulations. Others, these folks would say, wait a minute, Senator, they protect us, those regulations you said.
And we need them to protect us. But the mindset of the staffing in those departments ought to be this. How can we say yes to this great new job creator and also protect the environment?
Balance.
How do we find a way to make it happen, to build that road, to create that company, to allow that expansion, rather than saying, no, it's not going to work out for this regulation? It's all about a mindset. And at the end of the day, we protect the environment when we can have the right dollars to put behind rigorous environmental programs. But when we're strapped for cash, when we have a $6 billion structural deficit, and we can't pay for our roads, and we can't pay for our pensions, and we can't pay for our obligations, it's those consumer protections that over time won't be able to be financed and strengthened. So it's to everybody's advantage.
Senator, the time we have left, I'm curious about this. You talk about a some people argue it's a little bit more than a $7 billion structural deficit. Define structural deficit, because that puts you behind the 8 ball as soon as you and the governor and others who are responsible for coming up with this budget. Before you get started, that's like you go into your annual budget at home and you're in a massive hole before you even start talking about discretionary spending. Talk about what the structural deficit is.
It's not a deficit in the way we would have a deficit at home necessarily, where we got all these bills that we have to pay. It's an anticipated deficit because every year we do a new budget bill. Today we're going to hear from the governor on his initial proposal. But we have so many expected and recurring obligations that are very hard and sometimes
Pension
legally,
payments, healthcare payments for public employees,
sometimes legally need to be adhered to. All the things that you mentioned. So by the time we deal with
charity care costs
for hospitals,
people who can't afford the hospital,
and school assistance, which the courts
school aid
mandate that we pay an inordinate amount of money to certain schools, and we can't.
Is it inordinate, Senator?
And I think it can be, given some of the results. You add tax relief and you add other items, and so the discretionary part of the budget all of a sudden becomes a very small, minuscule
what's left for
part.
you and your colleagues to decide on.
Exactly right, the discretionary part. So when recurring revenues don't match up, it's a problem, and you've got to do some accounting and you got to do some magic tricks to make it all work. And then the next year you got to start all over again with some smart and sometimes not so smart budget machinery. So the way to deal with it, of course, because if we raise the income tax,
no way you're for that.
No, because
for millionaires?
Because it's counterproductive.
For millionaires,
No, because it's counterproductive, Steve. The math doesn't work out, and even if it work out, even if we raise it,
what do you say the math doesn't work out? I mean, those people are going to leave. We're not going to get their money.
Because we lose their income. So instead of paying a very high income tax bill, we get zero. But even if they all stayed, it's not enough to make up the deficit that we're talking about. It's not enough money. So we got to do some smart things. I'm gratified, and I'm very interested to see how the public unions will work with us to try to reform the pension problem. I was happy to hear of some recent reports on that front. And we got
having to do with the governor and potentially the New Jersey Education Association.
That's correct, and hopefully other unions, because it's their retirement, and they have the skin in the game. And I'm a state legislator, a longtime legislator. I've got a small pension. All of us have a big stake in this. We got to fix it. But the main thing is we have to grow the economy. We have to be a thriving economic machine, and that will lift a lot. That will provide us with the revenue we need.
Senator Joseph Kyrillos, while he represents the 13th Legislative District in Monmouth.
All Monmouth County.
He also is a key leader in the state legislature, and I want to thank you for joining us. You and your colleagues have been very kind.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation, celebrating over 25 years of broadcast excellence, and 13 for WNET. Funding for this edition of One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been provided by Barnabas Health, the New Jersey Education Association, New Jersey's credit unions, NJ Best, Fedway Associates, Community Education Centers, the Northeast Regional Council of Carpenters, and by these public-spirited organizations committed to informing New Jersey citizens about the important issues facing the Garden State, and by Employers Association of New Jersey.